What's going on, everybody? This is an episode from the No Gimmicks Needed Wrestling podcast. Do you like podcasts and you want to see the full podcast? Make sure you check out the No Gimmicks Needed Wrestling podcast on all your podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, among many others. But you're listening to the episode right here on YouTube, so make sure you hit that like button and below, and make sure you hit the subscribe button to NC Studios and NC Level Up for all your gaming needs. This is the Nerd Coalition. Enjoy the show. Now we're going to talk about the one 2 Tuesdays ago, which is the episode about Tony Helm, also known as LUDVIG BORGA, HELLRAISER from HELSINKI. I don't know how to pronounce that. So here's the thing: I did not know anything about LUDVIG BORGA at all. Okay, and at the time that he was in WWE, I wasn't watching WWE at the time. I was watching WCW. Okay, so by the time he came and left, I was not watching WWE, so I didn't even know who he was. And even going back onto it, I didn't know who he was. When I saw the trailer for Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, and I was like, I don't know who this guy is, and I was like, will the story be interesting? And they were talking about stuff. Hey, he's more known sometimes even outside the wrestling world with the controversial stuff that he has going on and the racist stuff he got going on. I was like, we got one of them kind of people on here. So, you know what? Let's check this thing out, shall we? I said, because usually when you got all this kind of drama that goes on like that, it tends to be something crazy, right? So, he made his debut, I believe, in WWF in the summer of 1993. Because they had Jim Cornette and Jim Ross on the episode as well. And then Vince at that time, like in the 90s, like I said, Vince loved the foreign heel. If you were not from America, you were the foreign heel. And they usually build you up as this, killer monster and fed you to Hulk Hogan. Like that is one of the reasons why I didn't care for WWF back in the day. Even when, like I said, I started watching wrestling in 93. So I cared more for WCW. WCW had its problems. But at that time, like the foreign heel, everybody was a foreigner. And the foreign heel, that's what they were made to do. And then the great American hero known as Hulk Hogan will be the one that would take them out. Now, he was from Finland. So it was just like, okay, he's from Finland. I mean, like, so how much of a foreign heel really is he? He's from Finland, right? So, but they was like, they needed to really get this guy over. So they bring in Tatanka. Yo, funny thing, right? So when they bring in Tatanka, he talks about like Tatanka had a 2-year undefeated streak. I said, excuse me? I did not know anything about him having a 2-year win streak. I was like, I like Tatanka, right? Okay, even when Tatanka makes the video games, I like Tatanka. However, I was like, I didn't know they had Tatanka going on. Did not know they had Tatanka go on this crazy win streak. I'm like, that's Goldberg Oscar numbers right there. And I'm like, for Tatanka? So Tatanka's on there trying to explain what it's like to, get put over, and he was giving him the rub and stuff like that. I was like, well, if I didn't know Tatanka was on that run, I was just like, it's just Tatanka, right? So he goes and they has this match with Tatanka, and he beats Tatanka and pins him with one finger. So that ended Tatanka's winning streak, and then that is like what they really try to get him over as this monster heel, because at this time there was no more Hogan. Hogan was about to come over he was about to leave. I was way out the door trying to go into Hollywood before coming back to WCW. So at this time, especially going down, they were trying to build up Luger as the next American hero at this time, and I remember not caring for Luger at this time neither. So, usually in the locker room, people didn't really want to get close to this guy at all. And he had that aura about him. And they come to find out that he had this SS tattoo on his leg. And for those who know the SS tattoo, it's one of Hitler's private army. And it was like, okay, so this guy is like a Nazi, right? That's what's going on here. And now Jim Ross says that he did... It got past him. They never realized the SS tattoo on his calf, and then that's when things really started going downhill. And then that's what Cornette tells us about Hitler's private army. But Jim Ross said, "Yo, we made a mistake. It slipped by us. So now they had to have him cover the tattoo, because if the boys had found out about it, or if our Jewish channel had found out about it, they would have had a problem with it. You're damn right they would have had a problem with it. And honestly, look, let's not act like WWE or wrestling in general had the quality control. Like, it's like, even if Vince had saw, it's like, listen, I need another foreign heel, and it's like, we can probably look past this or put it up. Now, according to Jim Ross, he said it could. They probably didn't know. Once again, if you came in there and with pants and you had the high wrestling boots, you probably wouldn't have seen it. But still, it's like, okay, well, we here now, so let's try to cover it up. But he said he was just a miserable human being, and he made people around him very uncomfortable. That's when we get kind of a little of the switch in here, where we are talking to Mikko Marinin, who's a journalist, and he's a writer of Tony Helm biography. And he says Tony's mom was Swedish, and was a Swedish speaker, and they put the boys in a Swedish-speaking school. It made Tony feel like an outsider. He came from a broken home. His parents were divorced when he was 2 years old. Both parents had a drinking problem. And I guess this was to build up the sympathy that he had for his, I guess the sympathy to have for him, I'm guessing. Chrysler Marxikus, I can't really pronounce it. It was his childhood friend of Tony. He was talking in their language because they had the subtitles up for him, so he doesn't speak English. He said local people would shun them because they were Finno-Swedish, and their kind usually lived in the suburbs. And he said when you're Finno-Swedish, people thought you were the F word for gay people. That's how. That's what he said. They had to blank it out, right? They had like different audio from Tony later in his life talking about his upbringing. He says his mother chose the bottle over her sons, and he left the home at 14, 15 years old, and then he moved over to his friend's place and started taking up boxing and other combat sports. So then at that time when he started doing it, he called himself the Viking, right? Because he was like really into that, and he was called himself the Viking before he was even a professional wrestler. He even got Viking tattooed on his arm. And we're just getting the bar fights. We're getting the street fights and stuff like that. And he was a big fan of the movie Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver, I'm going to tell you right now, by Martin Scorsese. Great movie. You got to go check that out. Robert De Niro. So, yeah, that's a really good movie you should check out if you guys like movies, stuff like that. And it made him decide that he wants to come to the U.S. one day. That movie. I was like, maybe. But I was like, there are other movies. But he moves to L.A. in about like 1986, I believe it was. And he met Dee Dee. Dee Dee is his ex-wife. And he says that Tony was larger than life, and she fell in love with him quickly. And he wanted to be a movie star in America. And he went to Gold's Gym in Venice Beach and wanted to be a bodybuilder. And they know that, well, even though he wanted to be a bodybuilder, he wasn't in shape for it. He still had like a belly for it. So you really got to be chiseled out of Greek god stone to be bodybuilder, especially when you go to Gold's Gym and stuff like that. So he didn't have the necessary body for that. So then he started using steroids. They came in packages from Russia. And one of the packages, he said, it said like 4 horses on it. I'm just like, wow, okay. So then he did get some small roles, and you see him in certain type of movies. I think he even made an appearance in Die Hard 3, which I didn't even recognize it was him because I didn't even know who the hell he was. But that was later on. But they showed some clips of him in TV shows. I was like, I'm not too familiar with any of these TV shows. I did recognize Tim Reed in one of those clips, and I was just like, well, I'm a fan of Tim Reed, but I was like, I don't know what TV shows or commercials, stuff like that it was. So even the people in the gym, when he was in the Gold Gym, was like, you should really get into wrestling, bro. You got like the rise up for it. So that led him to the UWF. Herb Abrams. I think I may have done a review of Herb Abrams somewhere on this platform. I don't know if it's from the old channel or not, but I'm pretty sure that it can't be from the old channel. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I did a review of Herb Abrams in the UWF. That was wild. that was a wild story. So he was the Viking in UWF, and then he got his first big break in Japan. He was in Japan, and then Tommy lied to everybody he was a boxer, even though he never had a boxing match, right? And he said they were saying Japan loves their giant monsters, and then we'll get to that when we talk about Vader. And Giant Monster Tony fit right in, and he put him in a match with Vader. You know, speaking of the devil, he became a star in Japan, and then he had the addiction to the painkiller, stuff like that. So then they introduced this guy named Michael Margelli. I forgive me, y'all, for not being able to pronounce these names right. I'm terrible when it comes like that, trying to pronounce these names, stuff like that. But he was the founder of Slam Magazine and Wrestling Finland, and he said that Tony would speak about himself like he knew he was going to be somebody. But as he was talking about himself, it's like the guy was like, you got to realize who was in the room. He was around a bunch of skinheads. He was around. He was sympathetic to the white brotherhood, so you know, straight racist shit, right? And the wrong thing came out of his mouth one day, and he got in a fight with Scott Norton. Now, first of all, you don't want to get in a fight with Scott Norton, okay? If anybody remembers Scott Norton, once again, I used to watch WCW a lot, so I remember Scott Norton very well. I remember Scott Norton when he was with Fire and Ice back in the mid-'90s. I remember that tag team. So, and I was like, oh, he got in a fight with Scott Norton. So, and I guess he had enough of his racist talking or something like that. Because once again, I don't know if Scott Norton was Jewish or it's just like, you know, I just don't. There are just some people who just like, yo, you need to chill out with all that racist shit. So I was like, oh, okay, Scott Norton. I'm going to be frank with you. I don't know anything about Scott Norton, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? I don't know anything about Scott Norton. But, and he said so, but they got into a fight in a bar. Now, once again, Scott Norton got his story. Then, you know, LUDVIG got his story of what necessarily happened on both sides of the incident. But other than that, it was the end of Tony. They was like, no, we're going to get rid of this guy to control things. They got rid of Tony to Japan, and he went back to California. So now it goes back to his ex-wife talking about, so she overlooked a lot of things, and he would get certain things in the mail that had like swastikas, I believe, and stuff on there. And she said, I was just young and overlooking things. I was like, really? I was like, it's like some things you just know that it'd be some hateful shit, right? It'd be like just some hateful shit. Like, do you just not want to see it? You know, because there are a lot of people that's like that. I just don't fucking want to see it. You know. And she still loved him, but she didn't want to be with him anymore. And he became emotional. And then they filed for a divorce. And he told her that he would drive a truck off the pier as soon as they split up. And then so it kind of like, you know, abused her or pressured her to stay with him type thing. So then in 93 comes, he joins WWF, right? And he gets this crazy ass push, which goes into what I told you about beating Tatanka. And it's supposed to be him to get over as a heel to go up against, to feed him to Lex Luger, right? But he had terrible promos, and he was, you know, he speak like half, you know, Finnish and English, you know, and then people just didn't care, you know, they really did not care, and it was like, who cares about this guy? Like I said, once again, I don't remember this guy at all, so. And Jim Ross, like he had a lack of ability to connect with the audience. And it goes back to, you know, to the SS tattoo. It is how just basically, it was problematic, right? His ex-wife said he got a tattoo because it got him attention. He was fascinated by Nazis, and she continued that he spent time in Russia and came back with memorabilia. That had like a creamer picture, and they had a swastika on the bottom of it, and it was dated 1941. And she used it as a flower pot, and she was naive and basically didn't know shit from salad at that time because she was naive. And I was like, sure, I was like, you know, these things are possible. So, but then when he brought the tattoos, this is the one that kind of blew my mind. They're talking about that he had other tattoos, and on the back. On the back of his ass, he had the tattoo "Exit Only" tattooed on his ass. And Cornette made a point. He was like, "What the fuck would propel a man to tattoo "Exit Only" above his asshole, especially the size he is and looks like that? Do you really need written instructions for people not to fuck you in the ass?" So. You are so anti-homosexual that you have exit only tattoos above your ass. So who's going to know? Oh, don't fuck him in the ass. once again, like very homophobic. Usually, people that they got these homophobic type of like so anti-homophobic with stuff like that. Usually, they be like undercover gay, and they are having turmoil or fight with themselves. Like, what would possess somebody to do that? Like, you can't be like, what would possess somebody to actually like, grab, like, what will put you in a situation where you would need to even show that? Like, and that's the kind of things I like. What would put you in a position that need to do that? So it was at Madison Square Garden. He got injured in the match, and after he got injured in the match, that was pretty much his time up at WWE. That was it. And then he was going for the WWE, and then that's when he went off the rails. He tried to go to hit up UFC and didn't take it seriously. And his first match came against Randy Couture, who is having his first match. And I was like, he's going around parade talking something. Ain't nobody gonna tap me out, stuff like that. And the man loses like a minute. He's not a trained fighter for this, right? And once again, he has a tattoo that's visible. And Tony told people he would never tap out and would rather die. So he gets choked out. So his house in LA gets raided by the police, and he was charged with trafficking controlled substances, the steroids, and possession of illegal firearms. Because he loved guns. And guns in America gives everybody power, right? So that's what it is. And he was in prison, and he was deported back to Finland. He was no longer to be allowed to come to the United States. And this is when it really started going downhill for him in this episode. Like, really. So in Finland, he did some American Gladiator. So I'm going to kind of breeze through this a little bit. He goes there. He tries to do some American Gladiator stuff. And then he's very popular in Finland. Then he writes a book that has a lot of false stories and narrative in there, which then he decides to get into politics to get himself in the party. So Timo Sonny, former True Finns party leader, who was a leader of this small party at the time, they built Tony his own website, and we'll get back to this. The Cold War ended in Finland, and there was also a recession at the time, and immigrants became scapegoats for troubles that the country had. The country wanted to take care of their own before anyone else. He had the charisma, and they were saying that there's a lot of similarities between wrestling, or parallels between wrestling and politics, because there were comparisons between how he was and how he was able to sell people on his hatred and his ideals to people out there in Finland, which they gave a lot of parallels to Trump. So it was a lot of parallels for that. He had he didn't care about being politically correct at all. He just said anything he wanted to say, and he knew it would get a reaction, especially out on TV. Use the N-word just like we saying, good morning or hello, or hey, how you doing? And it's the thing just how this flew out his mouth. Talked about homosexuals and all these other things that, and rants about immigrants, how they're increasing crimes in Finland and all that kind of stuff like that, and make racist jokes and stuff like that. And when the election day comes up, he wins a spot in Parliament in HELSINKI by a landslide, which I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. He won with a landslide, and people voted for him, which is kind of like some of stuff that we see today, because somebody takes the shit he's selling, and they go and they vote for him. His advisors would try to tell him to tone things down a little bit, and he did not want to do that, and he was viewed as a white supremacist, to be completely frank. He was in an interview saying, if you call me a Nazi or something else, it's a bit different than calling an N-word an N-word. And I was just like, okay, this guy, his mind is thrown. Look, to fast forward a little bit, he ends up losing his spot in the politics. His life goes to shame. His wife left. He gets heavy into the drugs. He gets heavy into the alcohol. And all things are spiraling out of control for him. And at one point, he goes home to his wife. He gets in a fight with her. And she's going to leave, and Tony takes a handful of pills and just swallows them. And she wants to call the ambulance. Tony grabs a gun. And there's a struggle, and then the gun goes off. Nobody, I don't think, was hurt from that incident that they had. It got really bad to the point where we're going down. His best friend, Krister, went to Tony's house for his birthday one day. Couldn't get the door open, and Tony didn't answer. And they called the police, and they found him, and he was dead from shooting himself. He killed himself. And once again, look, I was just like, man, look, it's hard, trying to understand mean and hateful people. especially to somebody who just hates you, you know, and even if they don't even know you. And it was hard to try to find people who had remorse for him dying, and they really didn't. Even his ex-wife, they really didn't care almost about that. And I'm just like, yo, this was a real asshole, a real stain walking the earth. There was, and once again, this Dark Side of the Ring was more, you know, known for what happened with him outside the ring than it was for him inside the ring. And I was like, it lived up to its name of being Dark Side of the Ring. I will say that much about it. But yeah, this one I was just like, oh god, these people just, it's sickening. It really is sickening out there, and the parallels that it does have to politics and the politics that we deal with today, it's very disturbing to say the least.